Welcome to the discussion video on accounting for consignment sales. So this is a special transaction which is covered under the advanced accounting as a board subject of AFAR, yung Advanced Financial Accounting and Reporting in your SIPALE board exam. The learning objective for this module is to define a consignment arrangement, to apply the principles still of PFRS 15, revenue from contracts with customers, in recognizing revenue from a consignment arrangement. So, we are familiar with the term consignment sales as we look in the basic principles na inintroduce sa inyo before in recognizing inventory. 'Di ba kapag consigned inventory 'yan, kung ikaw ang consignee o ikaw yung if you are the consignee, hindi mo yan nire-recognize as an inventory in your books, but it is recognized as an inventory at the books of the consignor or yung talagang may-ari ng inventory. The ownership since the ownership on consigned inventory rests on the consignor, it will be recognized as an inventory of the consignor and not the consignee. So how do we recognize this? So this is just a special module, a short special module for the consignment sales. So under consignment arrangement, an entity delivers goods to another entity. So yung may-ari or the consignor deliver the goods to another party or the consignee who undertakes to sell the goods and to end customers on behalf of the consignor. Kumbaga, the consignee will be responsible in selling the inventories. So ano ang effect niyan? So under normal circumstances, meron siyang commission, pwedeng meron siyang markup. So bakit ginagawa itong consignment arrangement? Para ma-extend yung sales. Kumbaga, kung ikaw ang may-ari ng ganitong products, you want na mas marami kang mabenta. So you agree on these arrangements para tumaas ang ating sales at makilala yung product natin. So the consignor recognizes revenue only when the consignee sells the consigned goods to end customers, because it is only at this point that the consignor relinquishes control over the goods. So once na nasa consignee pa yung items, wala pa tayong nire-recognize na revenue dyan. Kumbaga lang, isipin mo na nandun pa lang sa sales outlet mo yung inventory items. So only when it is sold to the end customers will you recognize the revenue for the inventories sold. Accordingly, the consigned goods remain in the consignor's inventory until they are sold to end customers. The consignee records the consigned goods only through memo entry. So this has been discussed earlier. What happens when there are freight and other incidental costs? So it will depend on the consignment arrangement, but the normal circumstances will dictate that the freight and other incidental costs should be borne by the consignor. Kung sino yung may-ari ng inventory, dahil yung freight nun, yung transfer from the consignor to consignee, it should normally be borne by the consignor, yung may-ari ng inventory dapat. Consignor incurs in transferring the consigned goods to the consignee are capitalized as cost of the consigned goods. What repair costs for damages during shipment and storage and other maintenance costs are charged as expenses on the part of the consignor. If the consignee shoulders the freight, halimbawa, temporarily siya nag-shoulder ng freight and other incidental costs, it is reimbursable. Okay, consignor treats the cost as receivable from the consignor if the costs are reimbursable. If the arrangement indicates na it is not reimbursable, then expense yan. So, normally, itong mga consignment arrangement, sa mga problems na may encounter mo, you should be familiar with the terminologies identified. Kasi there is no specific rules for this. It will depend on the arrangement. So, pwedeng reimbursable yung mga freight costs, pwedeng hindi. It will depend on the arrangement. So, let us look at the typical arrangements. If in a typical consignment, the consignee is entitled to a commission based on the consignor's sales price. So, normally may percentage na ibibigay sa'yo dyan kung magkano ang revenue na ma-generate ng consignee. The consignee purchases the goods from the consignor simultaneously with the sale to the end customer. So, in other arrangement daw, in typical arrangement, pwedeng commission-based. In other arrangement, pwede rin yung simultaneous niya na kapag may bibili na, tsaka palang kukuha kay consignor, and then pwede siyang maglagay na lang ng markup doon, or pwedeng taasan niya yung presyo, or pwedeng may commission pa rin siya. Ganun lang ang sinasabi under the passages related to this. Okay. Normally, the consignee deducts its commission from the amount remitted to the consignor. Since may period kung saan i-remit niya lahat ng commission, ay lahat ng sales for a particular period, ibabawas niya po na doon yung commission related to that at yung mga other receivable na reimbursable. Okay? Okay. When the consigned goods are sold to the end customers, the consignor recognizes revenue at the gross amount of the consideration, that is the sales price agreed with the consignee. The consignee naman will recognize the commission revenue at the commission or fee to which it is entitled. So let us take a look at the illustration. Revenue recognition from consignment sales. So sa ABC, nakipag-arrange siya with XYZ, consigned goods costing 220,000 with a total sales of 390,000 to XYZ. XYZ will be entitled to a 20% commission based on its sales. So, at this point, how do we recognize this? At the books of both the consignor and the consignee via a memo entry. So, memorandum entry, ilalagay lang ni ABC na kinonsign niya yung items kay XYZ. Ganon din naman sa books ni consignee. So, at this point, di ba, makikita mo na yung inventory account ay hindi nagalaw. Ibig sabihin, kung kanino siya nung initial, kung kay ABC siya, kay ABC pa rin naka-retain yung reporting ng inventory na yun kasi consigned inventory ito. So, XYZ sells consigned goods costing 55,000 for 100. ABC company is not notified of the sale. So, si XYZ, nakapagbenta siya ng consigned goods na 55,000 ang worth, may markup. So, nabenta niya yun for 100,000. So, sabi dito, ABC is not notified of the sale. Since ABC, hindi pa niya alam yung sale, there is no entry at the point of view of ABC company, yung consignor. On the consignee, XYZ, how do we recognize this? You debit cash 100,000, debit, credit, commission income. Magkano ba ang commission? 20% of the sales. Magkano ang sales dyan? 100,000 times 20% is 20,000. Next, payable to ABC company is the balancing figure here. Magkano yung natira? Payable to ABC, yan yung liability ni consignee. Ito yung i-remit niya, 80,000. Okay? Sir, paano kapag notify si ABC company of the sale? So, kung ino-notify mo, na-notify si consignor, the entry would be, dahil wala pa naman siya nare-receive, you just have to set up a receivable account. Receivable from XYZ, 80,000. Debit commission expense. So, ito po yung kakontra ng commission income. Kasi ito ay babayaran ni, kumbaga, in effect, binabayaran ni ABC yung commission kay consignee. However, dinideduct na kasi niya diretso. Kaya it is proper for you to recognize an expense. Okay? Debit, commission expense. And then credit, revenue for the total of the sales. Okay? However, the notification is very impractical in actual practice because hindi yan feasible na every time na may ibebenta tayo ay ino-notify natin yung ating consignor. So normally may period yan. Pwedeng twice a month, monthly, pwedeng weekly. It will depend on the volume of the transaction. So in such cases, yung recognition natin ng revenue will be on a particular period kung kailan natin ni-remit. So, let's take a look at the sample. So, normally, itong notification, it does not happen in actual practice, yung ino-notify mo pa siya. Ang nangyayari in actual practice is yung mismong remittance na lang. So, how do we recognize? For example, ni-remit niya yung items na yan. Debit cash ka, 80,000. Debit, commission expense, 20,000. Then credit revenue, 100,000. And then, since kailangan tanggalin mo yan sa inventory mo, you debit cost of goods sold and then credit inventory for the cost, 55,000. Si XYZ naman, how do we recognize it? Alisin mo lang, i-remit mo lang. Debit yung liability account which is payable to ABC and then credit cash, 80,000. Okay. Sir, paano in theoretical, this is independent. In theoretical practice, paano kapag ni-notify mo na dito? Ano po ang magiging entry mo once na ni-remit? O ano lang, debit cash and then credit receivable from XYZ. Kasi nag-recognize ka na ng commission expense and revenue dito. Okay? But in practice, medyo malabo na mangyari na ino-notify mo siya every time na makapagbebenta ka. So, ang nangyayari in actual practice is diretso na remitted. Hindi na tayo nagsiset up ng receivable accounts na ganyan. Okay? Kaya mapapansin mo dito, nung niremit, tsaka palang nag-recognize ng expense and then revenue. Okay. Okay, one of the considerations in the consignment sales is for us to identify whether it is a principal or the versus agent considerations. So PFRS 15 provides the following additional guidance in the consignment transactions. So kailangan nating ma-identify whether an entity is acting as a principal or an agent on the transactions kasi may bearing yan dun sa recognition ng revenue niya. So, pwedeng tanungin sa'yo yung how do you recognize the revenue on this particular period. So, kailangan ma-identify mo whether the entity is a principal or an agent to the transaction. So, for you to be guided, a principal may personally satisfy a performance obligation. It may engage another party to satisfy some or all of a performance obligation on its behalf. When the performance obligation is satisfied, the principal recognizes revenue at the gross amount of consideration. Okay? Pag principal ka, nire-recognize mo yung revenue at the gross amount of consideration. Paano naman kapag agent ka? An agent, an entity is an agent if its performance obligation is to arrange the provision of goods or services by another party. When the performance obligation is satisfied, the agent recognizes revenue at the commission or fee to which it is entitled. Dahil siya ay agent lang, ang nire-recognize niya lang na revenue ay yung commission or fee related to that consignment transaction. So, the question here is, how do we recognize whether it is a principal or an agent? So, there are guidance for you or indicators that will guide you. The following are the indicators that an entity is an agent and therefore does not control the good or service before it is provided to a customer. 1. Another party is primarily responsible for fulfilling the contract. So aside from you, meron pang another party na primarily responsible. Next, the entity does not have inventory risk before or after the goods have been ordered by a customer during shipping or on return. Kumbaga, kung halimbawa mawala yung inventory, walang risk on the part of that entity, ibig sabihin agent lang yon. Because yung risk on the loss of the inventory will be on the owner or the principal. Next, the entity does not have discretion in establishing prices for the other party's goods or services. Since wala kang pang inventory risk dyan, it follows na yung pag-establish ng prices will not rest on you because ikaw ay treated as an agent. The entity's consideration is in the form of a commission. Okay, so may commission ka lang para nabenta mo yun, agent ang classification. The entity is not exposed to credit risk for the amount receivable from a customer in exchange for the other party's goods or services. Since ang responsibility mo ay makabenta, yung risk of collection ay hindi sa'yo. You do not bear the risk of collection. It is more of the principal. Kaya kapag ganun, ikaw ay agent. So let us take a look at the illustration 1, which will guide you as you go along with a thorough understanding of consignment. So Shopee company operates a website that enables customers to purchase goods from a range of suppliers who delivers the goods directly to the customers. When a good is purchased via the website, Shopee is entitled to a 10% commission based on the sales price. Shopee's website facilitates payment between the supplier and the customer. Shopee has no further obligation to the customer after arranging a sale. Shopee is an agent. So kung tingnan mo, as a word imply, one a good example is yung Lazada, yung Shopee. These are agents. Bakit sila agents? Because they put up a website to allow sellers to meet their customers. Kumbaga, meron silang pinut up na portal for the customers and the sellers to meet and to agree on the particular prices. So, anong analysis diyan? On those cases, the entity in this illustration, Shopee is an agent because it does not control the good or service before it is provided to the customer. Shopee's performance is to arrange the transfer of goods from the supplier to the customer. When this is satisfied, Shopee will recognize revenue equal to the commission. So kung nakapagbentahan sila, ang revenue niya is on the commission ng pagkakabenta. Kasi sabi dito, 10% commission based on the sales price na naibenta. Okay, let's take a look at illustration 2. So, X company installs CCTV, yung mga for customers. X company does not maintain inventory of CCTVs. Instead, when a customer contracts X company purchases a CCTV from a supplier and install it at the customer's premises. So, ibig sabihin, kung ikaw ay CCTV company or entity, nag-install ka ng CCTV, kapag may nag-inquire sa'yo at gustong magpa-install ng CCTV, tsaka ka palang hahanap ng CCTV proper for the client. Then, appropriately, magma-mark up ka dyan. So, ano ang analysis natin in these transactions? X company, yung CCTV company, is principal because it controls the CCTV before it is provided to the customer. This is evidenced by the following. 1. X is primarily responsible for fulfilling the contract because although the CCTV is purchased from a supplier, X is ultimately responsible for ensuring that the CCTV functions in accordance with the customer's specifications. Next, X has inventory risk because of its responsibility in correcting errors in specifications. X has discretion in establishing the selling price with the customer kasi pwede nga siyang mag-markup related dyan. X consideration is not in the form of a commission. Hindi yan commission. X has credit risk for the amount receivable from the customer. So when the performance obligation is satisfied, X recognizes revenue at the gross amount of the contract price negotiated with the customer. So kung makikita mo yung logic diyan, although si X binibili lang niya yung mga CCTV once na meron ng client na magi-install, yung indicators tell that it is not an agent but it is a principal. Kasi yung inisa-isa nating items dyan. So, ano yung kahalagahan for you to identify whether it is a principal or an agent will be on the recognition of the revenue. Kasi kapag principal ka, di ba, matatandaan mo, if the principal, if you are classified as a principal, once the performance obligation is satisfied, you will recognize revenue at the gross amount, while kapag ikaw naman ay agent, you will recognize revenue at the commission amount o yung fee lang na commission fee na dapat nakitain mo for that particular transaction. So I think that ends the discussion on consignment sales. This is a very short module because it is easy to comprehend. There are some items that will give you some twists, and it is easy if we practice it by solving other items related to that as we go along with more of the exercises that will be posted on this module. Thank you.